Yeah, definitely. And she, again, talking about her mentality, she's so focused.
Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova walked onto the Estadio Arantxa Sánchez Vicario on April 22, 2026, and lost control of the match before she hit a single ball. Not because Alexandra Eala was faster, not because the clay was unplayable, but because Pavlyuchenkova had already spent everything she had just getting there, and the draw handed her the one opponent whose entire game was built to expose exactly that. This isn't a story about a shocking upset. It's a story about what happens when a body that's been to war for 21 years is asked to fight one more battle against a 20-year-old who trains on the same Spanish clay she's standing on.
Interesting matchup here. Of course, Pavlyuchenkova coming off a long losing streak, and Eala trying to get some wins on clay. I'm going to go with Eala in 3 sets. I reckon she'll get it done in the end. She has had a couple of tough roads and a couple of tough opponents in the last few matches, so I'm going to go with her in 3. And she has the, the favorite, I guess, or the higher ranked player in this matchup on this surface. Like I said, she has made a final of a French Open before, and before this week, hadn't won a match for a while. So using that confidence, winning a couple matches in a row, hopefully will give her some hope against Eala.
The Caja Mágica sits 650 meters above sea level, and that elevation isn't cosmetic. At Madrid's altitude, the ball moves faster through thinner air, bouncing higher than at Roland Garros, higher than in Rome. It's a court that punishes hesitation and rewards aggression, in theory. In theory, Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, 12 WTA titles, French Open finalist in 2021, career high of number 11 in the world, is exactly the kind of player who weaponizes that environment. But Pavlyuchenkova arrived in Madrid ranked number 116 and carrying a 0-6 win-loss record in main draw matches across the entire 2026 season. That number needs to sit for a moment. 0 wins, 6 losses in tour-level competition before she even set foot inside the Caja Mágica. And this wasn't a crisis of confidence. In 2025, Pavlyuchenkova was diagnosed with Lyme disease, a condition she described herself as causing brain fog, fatigue, and constant headaches, leaving her essentially bedridden for a stretch of the previous season. Layer on top of that a chronic knee injury dating back to 2023, and what you have isn't a veteran in decline. You have a veteran in survival mode. Just to reach the main draw in Madrid, Pavlyuchenkova had to qualify. She beat Victoria Tomova 6-3, 6-2, then ground through a brutal 3-setter against Yulia Starodubtseva 6-4, 0-6, 6-4 before she was even in the bracket. 3 matches, 4 days, on clay, with a strapped right thigh, and that's when the draw gave her Alexandra Eala.
The ball is definitely...
Alexandra Eala is 20 years old, born in Quezon City, Philippines, ranked number 44 in the world. But that number is deceptive in a way that analysts had already flagged as quietly dangerous. Eala had reached a career high of number 29 earlier in the 2026 season. The ranking dip wasn't a collapse, it was a mathematical side effect of defending a heavy points load from previous results. In professional tennis, there's a specific label for a player like that. A dangerous floater, a floater whose real ceiling sits well above her current number. A floater who had already beaten Iga Swiatek, world number 2, in Miami. Eala had been training at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca for 8 years, not weeks, not one season. 8 years of clay court philosophy, topspin, lateral endurance, defensive transition. The Estadio Arantxa Sánchez Vicario wasn't foreign terrain to her. She described Madrid as a home tournament. She lives in Spain. She switches between English and Spanish effortlessly in post-match interviews. In every structural sense, Eala is a clay court specialist wearing an opponent's ranking, but here's what the number still didn't tell you. Days before the tournament, Alexandra attended the Laureus World Sports Awards at the Cibeles Palace in Madrid, an event often called the _3_. She walked in wearing a custom Filipiniana dress crafted from piña fabric, a textile woven from pineapple leaves designed by her uncle, Rhett Eala. She stood in the same room as Aryna Sabalenka, as Carlos Alcaraz, not as a guest with a credential, as a peer. That's not a background detail. That's a statement about what Alexandra Eala represents to a country, to a sport, and to a tournament where she is simultaneously a local and a national ambassador. And Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova had to play her first. The match started at 7 p.m. Manila time, an evening slot in Madrid, when the sun drops and the clay cools, and cooler clay slows things down. The ball sits up longer, rallies extend, players have to generate their own pace rather than redirect it. For Pavlyuchenkova's game, built on early aggression, first strike tennis, keeping rallies short, that was already a structural disadvantage. She needed the altitude speed to punch through Eala's defenses. The evening air was working against her before the warm-up ended. The opening 4 games were competitive. Both players held serve. 2-all. Pavlyuchenkova was using her experience, mixing drop shots, going after Eala's forehand, trying to disrupt the rhythm of the younger player. On paper, she was doing everything right, but this wasn't the end of the physical story. Game 5 of the first set. Eala breaks Pavlyuchenkova to love. Unforced errors start piling up. Then in Game 6, Pavlyuchenkova calls a medical timeout. She leaves the court. She comes back with her right thigh heavily strapped. When she walked back onto that clay, her lateral movement was gone.
I think players easily can give you advice there.
Here's the tactical detail that almost no one has framed correctly. After that timeout, Alexandra Eala didn't attack harder, didn't rush the net, didn't go for shorter angles or more aggressive ground strokes. Eala started ballooning the ball, looping it high over the net, deep into the corners, forcing Pavlyuchenkova to retreat behind the baseline and generate pace from a static position. It looks almost passive, it looks like caution, but it was surgical. Because a player who can't slide laterally, whose thigh is strapped, whose knee has been problematic since 2023, who played 3 qualifying matches in 4 days while still recovering from a neurological illness, cannot consistently generate pace from a static position, not against a left-handed opponent whose cross-court angles open the court in directions that right-handed players simply cannot cover naturally. Pavlyuchenkova committed 22 unforced errors in the first set alone. 22. Eala committed 8 across the entire match. By the time the first set ended 6-3, it wasn't because Eala had overpowered a veteran. It was because Eala had made Pavlyuchenkova overpower herself. The second set confirmed what the first had already written. Eala moved to 3-1. And then, somewhere in the deep professional instinct that survives even a broken body, Pavlyuchenkova hit back-to-back aces to trim the deficit to 3-5. It was a brief, genuine flash of what she'd been at career high number 11. Controlled, powerful, precise, but it was 8 games too late. Eala won 8 consecutive points to reach 5-2. The match closed 6-3, 6-3. Total time, 1 hour and 31 minutes. For a clay court match framed in the media as potential chaos, it was almost clinical in how it unfolded. Pavlyuchenkova's breakpoint record told the whole story. She converted 1 chance from 6. Eala converted 4 from 8. The gap between those numbers isn't skill. It's composure under physical pressure on one side, and the complete absence of it on the other. Now here's the part that channels like Cortex Sports built their content around, the so-called quote for controversy. The claim that Pavlyuchenkova was visibly shocked, upset, distraught the moment she saw Eala's name in the draw bracket. The sourced analysis on this is precise, that regret was an analytical inference, a media-constructed narrative.
There's another. This one means Alexandra Eala.
There's no documented outburst, no confirmed moment of visible distress. What exists is the cold arithmetic of a player in physical crisis being matched against a clay court specialist and a digital sports media ecosystem that needed a story to go with it. Some outlets even dragged in a completely separate event, Eala's tearful loss to Yelena Ostapenko in Linz, to paint her as a controversial figure. Her conduct in Madrid was described across the board as professional and respectful. The controversy was the headline. The reality was the unforced error count. But this is where the deeper question actually lives, and it's one the __7___ framing quietly buries. If Pavlyuchenkova knew, if her camp knew she was physically compromised, that she'd already burned through 3 qualifying matches of energy, that the clay was slowing, that her thigh was failing, what does it mean that she walked onto that court anyway? That's not weakness, that's something else entirely. And the answer to that question says more about professional tennis in 2026 than any ranking number or match stat ever could. After the win, Alexandra Eala's second-round opponent was confirmed, Elise Mertens, the 19th seed and the world's top-ranked doubles player, a real test. A veteran whose game runs on exactly the kind of consistency Eala needs to match if she wants back inside the top 30. For Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, the Madrid defeat pushed her ranking toward a threshold that could force her into qualifying rounds for the remaining Grand Slams of the year. 3 matches before the main draw, with a strapped thigh still working her way back from the neurological damage Lyme disease left behind. The instant regret of the Madrid draw may eventually look like a turning point for both of them. For Eala, it confirmed she can dismantle experienced opponents not through power, but through patience and tactical restraint. For Pavlyuchenkova, it may serve as a signal, though what kind of signal is still unclear, because here's the question Madrid left completely unanswered. Was this the moment Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova decided she had more left to fight for, and or the moment she quietly realized she may have already given everything there was to give?